Today we've got a special viewer request from David Pacheco 3. He asked me to analyze one of his games where he played as white. So David, thanks for reaching out. I'm excited to break down your game and offer some insights and tips to help you improve your strategy. So let's jump right into it. So David's rating is 1530 and he was playing against a player called Crump whose rating was just 1047. But still, David couldn't win the game. Well, what went wrong? Let's try to learn some of the common mistakes that chess players tend to do. So David started the game with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, c3, knight f6, pretty standard opening moves. e5 by David, he's already gaining space and attacking black's knight. His opponent pinned this pawn, which is not a great move because David then just fortified his center with c takes d4. What a great move, David. Now since white has got strong center pawns, black wants to get rid of it, so his opponent played d6, challenging the center. But since the last move has opened up the king diagonal, David immediately capitalized on that with the move bishop to b5, pinning black knight to the black's king. What a great move, David. His opponent unpinned the knight with bishop to d7. David immediately castled. Very good move because since the king and the queen are in the same file, you want to quickly blast open this file and get your rook activated on this file. So here his opponent played knight to g4, which is a blunder. Why? Because this is opening the queen's diagonal over here and allowing white to play bishop to g5, attacking black's queen. If the queen moves over here, then his opponent will quickly lose a piece to the move d5, forking both of these pieces. Queen moves and now the knight is gone. Let's go back. So therefore, knight g4 was a blunder. But instead of playing bishop to g5, David thought of opening up this file, so he played e takes d5, which is a miss of opportunity. You are assuming that your opponent will capture back with this pawn and somehow you'll get to activate this rook over here and attack black's queen. But hey, that's a hope chess, David. Even if you're playing against a low rated opponent, do not assume that he's gonna make bad moves. So therefore, capturing this pawn over here was not a great move. It's a miss of a golden opportunity that you had for the bishop to develop on g5. Anyway, David played pawn takes pawn and now as expected the queen captured back. And since the pressure on this h pawn has increased a bit, David decided to play h3, kicking off this knight. But hey, this isn't a good move, reason being that although this pawn was under tremendous pressure, but it was well protected by white's pieces over here. As you can see, the king and the knight are doing a very good job of protecting this pawn. So therefore, a move like h3 wasn't really required here. It's a mistake. Why? Because unnecessarily, you are weakening your king side. So do not move your king side pawns post king side castling unless you have a very strong reason to do. Justin took his knight back to f6 and here David exchanged bishop for a knight. It's a mistake. Why? Well, if you carefully see, this is an open position and in an open position, bishops are much stronger than knights. So what you're doing is you're just giving up your bishop for a knight in an open position and that is why it takes away your advantage in the game. His opponent captured back with the bishop. His bishop is now sitting on a very strong, good diagonal, eyeing white's king side. And now knight to e5. I see what David is trying to do. Probably he's thinking of exchanging this strong bishop. But yeah, but this is a good idea to do, but there was no hurry to do this because as you can see, your other pieces are still undeveloped. All of these pieces are undeveloped. This rook is not yet active on this file. So you still have a lot of room for developing your pieces and making them active in the game. So choosing a move like knight to e5 over your other pieces development is not a very great idea. That is why it's not a very accurate move. So knight to e5 by David and now bishop to e7. The opponent is getting ready to castle his king. Knight takes bishop and now the opponent should have captured back with the queen, but he captured back with the pawn. Is just purposely messing up his own pawn structure, which is not so great. And now knight to c3 by David. Finally developing the queen side knight, which is a good move. The opponent castled and now rook to e1, finally activating on the open e file. Rook f to e8. The opponent is also taking charge of this open file. And now bishop to g5 by David. Well, it's not a bad move, but if you really see, this bishop is not doing a great job over here, because what is he doing? Is he trying to pin this knight to this bishop? Well, that doesn't make sense. So I believe a better place for this bishop would have been e3, because that way it would have remained in the center of the board, eyeing on both the sides of the black, as well as providing a strong protection to your isolated d pawn. So I would have chosen bishop to e3. But anyway, bishop to g5, and now his opponent developed the other rook, and now knight to e2. Well, not a very good move, because your knight was doing a very good job of controlling these key center squares, and now you're just moving it here in order to get it here. I have no idea what is your plan over here to control these squares. Doesn't really make sense to me. Better move in this situation would have been to target this weak pawn over here which the opponent has created. There are two isolated pawns on the c file, so a better move would have been to target this pawn by playing either queen to f3 or queen to a4, or maybe queen to c2, so that after you move this knight somewhere, or maybe queen to c2, getting the queen on the same file as the opponent's isolated weak pawn. Anyway, knight to e2, and now the opponent played c5. Very good move, because opponent has realized this is a weak pawn, it could become a target. So he's just moving the pawn forward and getting it exchanged with the d pawn. Black also have an isolated d pawn. It's a very good idea to exchange these pawns. So d takes c5, very good move by David, and queen takes c5, and now queen to c1, getting the queen on the same file as the isolated c pawn, also providing defense to this bishop over here, which is currently under attack by this black queen. And Justin moved the queen to b5. He doesn't want to trade off queens, which is fine. And here you cannot capture this free pawn because you will lose your bishop. So let's go back. So knight to c3, attacking the queen. Queen moves to f5, bishop e3, bishop d6, and now bishop takes pawn. Very good play by David. Till now, you're doing very good and you're up a pawn already. c5 by his opponent. What he's trying to do is close this diagonal of bishop so that the bishop is not able to escape, and then, this can be easily targeted. So since you cannot capture this pawn and the only square available for your bishop currently is this b6 square, all you need to do is find a way to make sure that your bishop stays protected on this b6 square. So after your bishop comes over here, the only way to give protection to this bishop is via this a pawn over here. So a4, a5, and now this bishop would stay alive here. So immediately you should have played a4 over here. But David played rook takes rook check. Not a bad move also, but I know there was a lot of tension on this e file. But after this check, the opponent will capture back with his other rook, and now if you see, you have lost control of the open e file. So this move just works in the favor of your opponent. Queen to d2 by opponent. He's not only attacking a bishop over here, but is also preparing to reveal a discovered attack on your queen by playing bishop h2 check. So what would have been a better move over here? So a better move would have been simply move the king to the h1 square. That way, the bishop would not be able to check the king and reveal a discovered attack on white's queen. All the problem is solved. But I guess, David, you missed out on this good move. But that's okay, it actually happens a lot. You just have to play a lot of chess and keep analyzing your games so that you learn from your mistakes and play better moves in your next games. And David here responded with rook to d1. Hey, that's not a good move, bro. This loses a piece. How did I find it? Because obviously your opponent is not going after this bishop over here, because if he captures your bishop, you will get to capture his bishop and the game would be just fine for both of you. Because rook to d1 allows your opponent to play rook to d8, which is what he exactly played in the game. He's still threatening here to play bishop h2 check, sacrificing his bishop, after which you will lose a free piece. I guess, David, you really realized what error has been made and you moved away your queen to the g5 square, but that wasn't great too, because that loses the bishop anyway. Your opponent is now up in material by 2 points and he has a clear winning advantage in the game. So what would have been a better move? Well, the better move would have been to capture this bishop over here. So queen takes bishop, queen takes queen, rook takes queen, rook takes rook, and now bishop takes pawn. So the material is equal on the board. But David, you would have had two strong connected pass pawns and that could have just turned the tables for you. Let's go back. So my piece of advice to you is don't overlook moves where there is a possibility of capturing small pieces with one of your big pieces. I know this is hard to see because In the head you must be thinking, hey, how can I capture this because it's protected twice by black's pieces. But if you would have done proper calculation, you would have realized that after these exchange of pieces, you would have left with equal material and the game would have been just fine for you. So rook to d8 by opponent, and David replied with queen to g5. Not a great move. His opponent took the bishop, and now you're down in material. And knight to b5, attacking the queen as well as double attacking this bishop over here, which is a good move. Here the opponent played bishop h2 check. Again a strong move because he's sacrificing his bishop so that he can get some counter attacking chances. And now before capturing this free rook over here, he first have to take care of his queen. So queen b8 check, getting out of this capture threat. Knight to d6, blocking the check. Rook takes knight, rook takes rook, queen takes rook check. And now g3, blocking the check. h6 attacks white's queen. Queen moved to e3. This all looks good, but since you are down in material, David, your opponent already has a winning advantage in the game. c4 by the opponent, a3 and a3 by David. A better move here would have been to play b3, challenging the pawn over here. If the pawn moves here, you can simply capture, and if he captures, then you can capture back with your queen, and you still would have had this strong pass pawn on the a file. So a3 by David, queen to e6, queen takes queen, pawn takes queen, king to g2, king f7, king f3, king e7, king e3, knight to d7. Not that great. King d4. David, wow, this part of the game you're playing very good because you have reached the endgame position and your king is in a much better position than the opponent's king because your king is sitting in the center of the board attacking this c pawn over here. Very good play, David. You are down in material but you haven't given up hope. You are still trying hard. And that's what makes you a very strong chess player. So big salute to your fighting spirit. Knight to b6 by the opponent, king to c5, attacking the knight, very good move. Knight to a4 check, forking white's pieces, king takes pawn, knight takes pawn check, and here David played king to b5. Well, not a great move. The better move over here would have been king to b3. Why? Because not only you are attacking this knight, but you are also pushing him away from this passed pawn over here. So the knight would have moved to either one of these squares. Let's say assuming knight to d3, attacking the pawn, you could have played f3, and now later you can strategize to push this a pawn over here. Let's go back. So therefore b5 is not a good move. b3 was a better move because whenever you get a chance to push your opponent's only attacking piece away from your own passed pawn, then you should do that. Anyway, going forward, king b5, king d6, f4, e5, pawn takes pawn, king takes pawn, and king to c6, g5, king d7. Hey, you need to understand one thing, that your opponent is already moving these pawns forward. So there is no point in going after these pawns via this route because by the time your king reaches to this side of the board, these pawns would have already gotten exchanged over here. So do not try to chase the impossible and waste time on the board. King f6, king e8. See, he's just defending nicely and you're just going after it, taking the long route. You will never be able to attack these pawns because the king is successfully defending these pawns. Also, by getting your king to this side of the board in the corner, you are just getting more into the losing position because at the end, opponent's king would be in a very active position in the center of the board and your king would be stuck in the corner of the board, which you don't want. Anyway, h5, king f8, h4, pawn takes pawn, now king to g8. I have no idea why you're moving here. You should have tried to get rid of this knight over here and probably try to push this pawn to gain some counter attacking chances. Anyway, but I guess by this time you had given up hopes on this game, which happens when you're losing. So that's okay. Do not feel bad about it. As someone has rightly said, you never lose, you simply learn, right? So back to the game, king g5, king f7, king f4, g6, g3, king f5, king takes pawn, king f4, knight d3 check, king f3, knight to e5 check, king f2, king g4, king g2, h3 check, king h1, king g3, and now you're trying to push the other pawn, but actually it's too late. Knight d3, a5, knight f2 check, king g1, h2 check. And here is when David resigned in the game, and I know because the queen is coming here, you cannot stop the queen, and after that the game would be just over in few moves. So David, overall you tried to fight hard with your opponent. and that's a good spirit to have. Even when you were down in material, you did not give up. You were trying to give a good fight, and that's really a good spirit to have as a chess player. I really hope all the tips that I shared with you in this video helps you to improve your game and become a better chess player. Now, if you enjoyed watching this game analysis, then don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more such content. Also, if you want me to analyze one of your games, then share the details of the game in the comments box below. And now let's move on to the question of the day. So here is a very simple position on the board. Black to play and win. It's a very simple puzzle, and I really hope all of you who are watching this video put your answers in the comments box below. So keep learning and keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next video.